All right, so you all heard in the last episode, he's going to thanks Mel for coming on board. You've all heard what Mel is saying. This is it. We're now going to come to a conclusion. He's going to bring it all together, and he's going to take a position. Obviously, from what AJ Deuce has taken a position, Mel is going to either agree or disagree. You also can agree or disagree. Waiting to hear. Let's see where you've come with it. Let's see what your conclusion is. Over to you, Mel.
Okay, so untangling the mystery of the inscriptions. Here's the big one. Elzerius Horn was custodian of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem between 1725 1726, and basically he makes a record of the inscription. He did not only deliver designs of a new drum that have been imprinted in countless academic articles, but also a dedicatory inscription, one that only comes as a surprise to those who have not paid attention, that was overlooked by the same academics. It means nothing less than the correction of al-Malik's signature to al-Mamun was not there in the early 18th century. Now we also know that not long before al-Malik's signature was not there either. It must have originated in the 1520s and 1530s with Umar's signature. Now I can't read Arabic, and I don't know how clear that is to Arabic readers, but according to AJ Deuce, the inscription says that Umar was the builder of the Dome of the Rock. This is what Horn had written down. But later, as we'll see, this was removed and changed. It became Abdul al-Malik for a while, and then later it was changed to al-Mamun. Now, a little bit of an aside. According to detailed architectural drawings undertaken by Ernest Tatum Richmond around 1920, the modern drum is circular. There is no viable case to be made how mosaics and inscriptions from the previously octagonal drum could have survived. So whatever is there in the drum, and these are not the ones that concern us in any case, but whatever is there, they are new. We can now confidently dismiss all mosaics and inscriptions on the drum and dome as 18th century works, fabrications, and fraudulent pretensions. The dedicatory inscription and its adjoining mosaics on the octagonal arcade leave us with few and precise choices within a fairly short period of time during the 16th and 17th centuries, Messianic Jews and Suleiman's successors. Okay, so the Serpent King Mosaics and Umar inscription, 1523, 1543, Abdul al-Malik's dedication, 1720 to 1744 AD. So these are big findings. He says that given the pilgrimage certificate from 1544, the Jewish Serpent King and his royal brother designs on the inner octagonal find their origin then between 1523 and 1543. So that's the design that you see there on the right. It's a very strange one, and it's very hard to make out here, but basically it's like a snake's head with a crown on the top, right in the center. So he believes that was done in the period 1523, 1543. And above that, you can see the Arabic inscription. That's part of the 20-meter inscription that's around the arcade. The inscription is from the same time, but it must have sported Umar originally. Abdul al-Malik's dedication is a likely cover-up executed between 1720 and 1744 AD. They must have replaced the dedication by Umar from the Serpent King. Al-Mamun's correction is from the 18th or 19th century. Do you want to...
Let me just so everybody's following you here. We're just looking here at the serpent's head, which is the 1544 mosaic. But you're saying that Abdul Malik dedication, do you have a picture of that? Can we look at that dedication inscription? Is that possible? Now here is the al-Mamun's correction, that giving him responsibility for building the Dome of the Rock. Let's take a look at this. And here I'm going to introduce this one right now. And you're saying this is much, much later. This is from the 18th to 19th century, or from 1700s to 1800s.
Exactly. Yeah. And what was done is simply that Abdul al-Malik's name was taken out, and al-Mamun's name was basically pushed into the space that was there, as it were.
And that's what you're looking at right there is what you see today. This is why, even when I was studying the Dome of the Rock back in the in the last century, back in 1995 under Gerald Hawting, he put this up there, and I remember him saying there is a confusion here as to who built it. Mamun's inscription name is there. That was probably added at a later date. You can see it's been added it's been superimposed over top.
Okay, so 1804, we see at last evidence of the round drum, at least according to A.J. Juice. To me, it looks like an acorn, but in 1804, Luigi Mayer's view of Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives shows a round drum, but an elongated cupola. Oh, I see what the difference is. So it's a round drum looking downwards, but from the side, the cupola is elongated. So the cupola, even as late as 1804, is still different from what it is today.
Let me just ask you, look at back that picture again. Which one are we looking at? The one in the center or the one at the bottom?
The one at the bottom, yeah.
Well, so what's the one in the center then? That looks more like the Dome of the Rock.
Let me see, am I wrong?
Next to the tower.
Just I would have...
Above it to the left.
I'm not... No, you have me confused. I thought that might be in the Holy Sepulchre in the background.
The Holy Sepulchre is below the Dome of the Rock, though. I mean, and it looks larger than the Dome of the Rock, which is the other way. Today, it's the other way around.
I'm not 100% now that you say it. I always assumed that either one in the foreground was the one, but maybe I'm wrong.
It does seem to be, because it has the space. It has the whole citadel around it, which is open, and it seems to suggest that's the Dome of the Rock. If that is the case, then you are correct. The cupola is too elongated. You're correct.
Yeah, it looks very much like an acorn to me. Now we find the following then. Another major restoration is undertaken under Sultan Mahmud II in 1817. So we're only talking just over 2 centuries ago. The marble of the exterior of the building is restored and a portico over the south Qibla entrance is built. Yet another significant change to the structure appears to have occurred, the cupola. So now we have that lovely rounded cupola that we know of today. Drawings with mosaics of the dome were made by Frederick Carterwood in 1833. His drawings include an outside view and a cross-section together with a layout of the mosaics in question. This is the first primary evidence that mosaics on the drum exist. Now we know the mosaics in the drum and al-Mamun's correction originate in 1817 and were completed before 1833. So that's when A.J. Juice puts al-Mamun's correction. So you're only talking about 2 centuries ago. And so essentially, the al-Mamun correction occurs not in the 9th century, but literally 1,000 years later. So that's quite a massive difference. It's a massive claim. So whether people buy into A.J. Juice's evidence or not, but I think it's very persuasive, to me at least. William Leighton Lake's steel engraving from 1841 clearly shows the round drum of the Dome of the Rock and the new cupola. And then we have this picture from a year later. The artist David Roberts draws the Mosque of Umar. That's how it's funny. He calls it the Mosque of Umar and not the Mosque of al-Malik or something like that. Actually, have I made a mistake there? There is a separate mosque, isn't there? Mosque of Umar in Jerusalem. Do you know, Jay?
I don't know of any Mosque of Umar in Jerusalem today. No.
I presume it's talking about the Dome of the Rock.
Drawing this and calling this the Mosque of Umar. What building are you referring to? That's the Dome of the Rock that you can see in the background.
It must be, yeah. I just doubted myself there for a second, but then that would indicate that even despite the inscription, the tradition of referring it to as Umar's Dome of the Rock seems to have survived even the inscription.
It could have been retained, if incorrectly. Nonetheless, it looks like at least there are different opinions. Now, what's the date on this one, David Roberts?
So this would be 1842.
1842. Okay.
Yeah. So it does really support A.J. Juice's most important claim, which is the idea that the inscriptions are very late. You can throw out all the other evidence if you like, but I think the central point that he's trying to make is a very good one, that the inscription does seem to be very late. All of the evidence seems to point in that direction. 1842, there's another image of the Dome of the Rock. Here's one from 1862. We can see the exterior tile work was mainly missing, so that again had to be renovated. And so to summarize then, here are the 7 holes that we've covered in this series.
Go back before you do the summary.
Go back.
Go back. Look at these picture, that one there and the one before that. Just go back to the one before that, and then the one before that as well. Notice what is missing on all of these domes. Where's the gold?
Yes, yeah.
Where's the gold? Go back again to these 3. And this is something that I brought up in a debate that I had way back in the 1998, I think it was. I was debating Abdul Green, and he was trying to tell me that the Dome of the Rock, I was saying that there's no Qibla. There's no Qibla in any of these structures, and including the Dome of the Rock. And he came back after a break and he just hammered me and said, Jay, you have no idea what you're talking about. Take a look at the southern portico. Above the doorway is chapter 2, verse 145, which talks about the Qibla change from Jerusalem down to the Masjid al-Haram. Of course, he considers that to be Mecca. And then he says, look at the drum. Look at the drum up here. And you see chapter 17, verse 1, which refers to the Miraj. That's the only reference we have to this event, where he goes from Mecca up to Jerusalem on the back of the winged horse, the Burak, and then bounces up to the 7 heavens from this place. And he says, that is proof that this was there from the very beginning. And I remember quickly going back while they went to do their prayers. I quickly went back and went through my books, and I came up with these images. And I noticed that there was no gold. And then I looked at the dates when it was renovated, and it was renovated in 1876. So I came back to him and says, no, you don't know what you're talking about, because what you're looking at are inscriptions, and also the ones that 17:1 and also the chapter 2, verse 145 to 149 were introduced in 1876, just a little over 100 years ago. This was not there in 691. So I was having this debate back in 1998. Where I had to use this. And I remember using a picture much like this one right here. And I said, look at the picture. There's no gold there. There's no inscription there. These were added in 1876. So we're talking about even after 1841 to 1842, they were added. And that's why you have the beautiful blue inscriptions and you have the beautiful golden dome that is now you can see it from everywhere, all over Jerusalem.
And it's interesting that they are using these inscriptions to prove their arguments, even though they know that these inscriptions are very late. The people in the upper echelons of Islam know the true history. It's just outside of that circle, people don't know this stuff.
What's fascinating is when they published that debate, that comeback that I had by looking at the dates, they edited out of the debate. They edited that one part. Why do you think they edited? Because they were not aware that the dome has been rebuilt. And at that time, I said 11 times, because that's what it said in the book that I was using, that had been built and rebuilt 11 times. Nothing to what A.J. Deuce has done now. Now, A.J. Deuce has actually walked us through how that has been rebuilt. And this has been, especially when you look at these pictures here, you can see this is not the dome that we're looking at today.
Yeah. So I'm going to just summarize all of what we've covered, the big 7 holes in the Dome of the Rock. Our earliest reference to a Dome of the Rock, i.e. a dome over the Temple Mount, is the late 9th century, so very late. Our earliest verifiable witness to the Dome of the Rock mosaics and the inner arcade inscriptions as they exist today is 1523, 1543 AD. The earliest witnessed inscription as to who built the dome was 1523, 1543, and it said Umar built it. The earliest verifiable date for the creation of al-Malik is 1720, 1744 AD. Complete rebuilding of the drum from the ground up, from octagonal to circular, mid-18th century, and possibly later, we take, what you said into account earlier. The mosaics and inscriptions on the drum and the dome are 18th century creations. And lastly, the earliest verifiable date for the creation of the al-Mamun correction is sometime between 1817 and 1833. So that's quite a list of holes that A.J. Juice has deduced, pardon the pun, from all the evidence. And I think he's done a great job, whether people agree or disagree with his conclusions. I still think that his contribution to this whole area has been massive with this paper. So I'm going to hand it back to you.
Yeah. And I mean, you've done a slap-up job of reviewing and giving us an overview of Juice's very lengthy paper. Thanks for doing that, Mel. That's been terrific. We all appreciate the work you put into this. You've also explained it very well. And I think anybody that has looking at that building, that's the third holiest shrine in Islam. It is the shrine that is dedicated to Muhammad going up to the seven heavens, called the Mi'raj. No reference to that at all, except today on the drum that says around the top from chapter 17, verse 1. And obviously for Muslims, they have always, I've never heard anybody doubt that this was al-Malik or that these inscriptions were by al-Malik in 692. You have done a good job, or I should say A.J. Juice has done a good job convincing me that we cannot make these statements that clearly anymore. We must be careful when we say this was built by al-Malik. What are you talking about? Which part of it was built? Well, we know not the outer part, nor the drum, nor the mosaics at the top, nor the inscriptions around the outside. Those were probably introduced in 1876. We know from what you've been going through that almost all these, let me just go back through where you have the line for you go back to the whole seven different criteria from the very beginning, and you give a check of certification after each one. Yep, done that. Yep, done that. Yep, done that. You've missed the last one, but nonetheless, you did 6 of the 7. And what's fascinating is that those are not suppositions. Those are not intimations. Those are not our experience or what we do believe or not believe. These are actual following the evidence on the ground, always following the evidence of the ground. We've come to these conclusions. And that's why we can conclude this. So in the future, whenever Muslims say these are inscriptions attacking Jesus Christ in the 7th century, no one doubts that Jesus Christ was attacked. There were anti-Trinitarian views rampant through that part of the world. But don't use the Dome of the Rock as a support for that. Be careful. That's all we're saying. Be careful, because these inscriptions look like they don't even get introduced until either the 1500s or the 1700s. So that's all we can say at this point. And certainly this building was one of the greatest building of its day that we've always been saying could well have been, but this is not it, not the one we're looking at here. This is not that building. This is a much newer rendition. And of course, it looks like we're not even sure who built this building. Is it Umar? Is it Mamun? Is it al-Malik? I would suggest that we don't know. We will never know that. There was probably a building built by al-Malik. We do know that Umar also built something up there. We do know that when Sophronius came and went into welcome him to Jerusalem after he had conquered Jerusalem, didn't really welcome him, but he wanted him to come pray at the Church of the Sepulchre. No, he marched right up to the Temple Mount. As a Jew, that would make sense. He wanted to bring back Jerusalem back to Judaism. He wanted to see the Messiah return again. This is where he would return. That would make sense. He would have built something there. Could it be this structure? No, obviously not. Now we now know this structure did not exist at all in the 7th century. What did exist? We will never know, because that has long gone. But please be careful of suggesting that what we're looking at today is a building that was built by al-Malik. We do know that he would have built something there, yes, but nothing for what we're saying here. So this whole discussion on these inscriptions attacking the divinity of Jesus, attacking the Trinity, attacking his sonship, and that God can have a son. He cannot beget, nor is he begotten. These are, yes, important for that time period, but do not use the Dome of the Rock as a proof text that these were there to support that. Of course, we do have to take into consideration that there are coins that also reflect these same sayings. We do have the coins of al-Malik from 696 and 697. Here is a gold solidus. I'm going to put it up here. And here is a copper, a silver rendition from the more eastern part, what is today Iran. The gold solidus from Damascus. These are coined, minted in 696, and they do have the Shahada, and they do have attacking not only that God is one, but that he has no associates, which is not the Shahada we have today. That is introduced in 696, 697. So those are there. We're not disputing that, because the coins are probably the best evidence. But we must be careful about suggesting that the Dome of the Rock can also support this injunction or can support these ideas. Not that early. Later, yes, but not this early. You want to end, say one thing like that before we head out and go on to another subject?
Yeah, I would say that, this is not the final word in all of this. I think there's enough evidence here to suggest that we shouldn't take it as certain that inscriptions came from the 7th century. There's enough material there to seriously doubt that. So we need to go back to the drawing board. If we are going to affirm that the inscriptions come from the 7th century, we're going to need to find some witness to those inscriptions that early. I lean towards A.J. Juice being correct on this one, but obviously there is going to be a bit of a debate between people who disagree with his conclusions. But I think at the very least, people should kind of view this as making it less certain than it ever was before. Yes.
This is what we're doing. We want to sift through. We want to find out. Obviously, the standard Islamic narrative says this was built by al-Malik, and that was very clear as far as the standard Islamic narrative that this is referring to the Muhammad, the man. Muhammad, he is the prophet of God. That's what the standard Islamic narrative has always told us. That's what all our professors, our seminaries, our Bible school, our universities have always said. Now, we've just stuck this building into it. We've put the Dome of the Rock into it. We've took the arcade into it. We put the drum into it. And we've asked to look and see what's come out from behind. And what we're finding is not at all a 7th century environment. What we're finding that comes out is all from the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 1800s, as late as the 19th century. We need to sift this material. We'll continue to do so. We want to give thanks to A.J. Diaz for doing the research for us. And I especially want to thank you, Mel, for unpacking it so that we can understand it, so we don't have to wade through all that massive material. But this is a green paper moving into a white paper. What does this mean? How does this have to help with our whole context of origins of Islam? Well, it puts back the dates hugely, enormously, not at all the 7th century. This could be 800 to 900 to 1,000, and in some cases, 1,200 years later. Great. Thanks again, Mel. This is, let's see how people respond. Let's see if they agree or disagree. You have the comments right at the bottom. Nonetheless, from Mel and me, through 3,000 miles apart, over and out.